I never planned for anything like this to happen. When I think about that night, I still feel the same flutter in my chest, a dangerous mix of fear, guilt, and something I can't quite name. Daniel, my husband, had insisted that Jason stay over after their late dinner meeting. The rain outside had turned into a relentless storm, and driving home was out of the question. Jason was his best friend since college, someone who had been around for years. I'd always liked him. He was funny, charming, the type of man who noticed small details. But I never thought I'd notice him this way. The evening was quiet after they came home. Daniel disappeared into the living room, already on his laptop, sending late emails. Jason wandered into the kitchen where I was making tea. "Need a hand?" he asked, leaning against the counter. I shook my head, but he stepped closer anyway, reaching for a mug from the top shelf. His arm brushed mine as he set it down, and a faint trace of his cologne lingered in the air. I tried to focus on the kettle, pretending not to notice. We talked about simple things at first, the weather, work, how Daniel was busier than ever. But somewhere in the middle of pouring the tea, the conversation shifted. Jason mentioned how Daniel used to talk about me all the time when they were younger, how he would brag about my laugh, the way I lit up a room. I smiled, but it felt bittersweet. Daniel didn't say things like that anymore. Our marriage had grown quiet, polite, almost businesslike. We shared a house, a bed, but it often felt like we lived parallel lives. Jason's gaze lingered on me a little too long. "He doesn't know what he has," he said softly. The words made my stomach tighten. I wanted to change the subject, but I didn't. Instead, I asked him about his last trip, and we ended up laughing over some ridiculous story about a hotel mix-up. His laugh was warm, easy, and I realized I was leaning in without meaning to. Later, after the tea was gone, Daniel went to bed early, mumbling something about an early meeting. Jason stayed in the guest room across the hall. I told myself the night was over, that I'd go to bed and everything would be normal in the morning. But sleep didn't come. The storm outside rattled the windows, and my mind kept replaying little moments from the kitchen. His hand brushing mine, the way he looked at me like he actually saw me. I gave up on sleeping and decided to get a glass of water. The hallway was dim, the only light coming from the kitchen. And that's when I saw him. Jason was standing at the counter, shirtless, sipping water from a glass. The light caught the lines of his shoulders, and for a second I froze. He turned when he noticed me, a slow, knowing smile spreading across his face. "Couldn't sleep either." I shook my head, stepping into the kitchen. "Storm's too loud." He set the glass down, eyes never leaving mine. "Or maybe something else is keeping you up." My breath caught. He took a step closer. The air between us charged in a way I couldn't ignore. I should have moved back, should have said something to break the tension, but I didn't. "Jason." My voice was barely above a whisper. "We can't." He tilted his head slightly, studying me. "Then tell me to stop." I stood there, heart pounding, every nerve alive. The truth was, I didn't want him to stop. And in that moment, I realized just how close I was to stepping over a line I could never uncross. The storm outside seemed to fade into the background, leaving only the sound of my heartbeat and the quiet hum of the fridge. Jason's eyes searched mine, waiting for an answer I wasn't ready to give. And that's where the night truly began to change. For a long moment, neither of us moved. It was just Jason and me, the soft hum of the refrigerator, and the storm tapping against the windows like impatient fingers. He stepped closer, slow, deliberate, as if giving me time to tell him to leave. But I didn't. My pulse was loud in my ears, my breath shallow. "Jason." I tried again, but my voice trembled. His hand lifted, fingers brushing along my cheek in a touch so gentle it almost hurt. My skin burned where he made contact. "You've been looking at me like you want this," he murmured, his tone low, like a confession and a dare all at once. I should have denied it. I should have laughed, rolled my eyes, told him he was imagining things. But my lips stayed pressed together, my silence giving him the answer he needed. He stepped even closer, his chest almost touching mine now. The faint scent of his cologne mixed with the storm air that drifted in from the slightly open window. I could feel the warmth radiating from him, making it harder to think. "You deserve to feel alive again, Elena," he said, his voice steady. "You've been alone for too long." Those words landed in the deepest part of me, in the place I'd tried to ignore, the part that had been starving for someone to notice me, to want me, to see me. I swallowed hard, my back pressing against the counter. This is wrong." "Maybe," he said. "But sometimes wrong feels more honest than the lie you've been living." And then he leaned in, his lips barely grazing mine. It wasn't even a kiss yet, just a question. Test. I froze, the tiniest space still between us. "Wait, please," I whispered, unsure if I was telling him to stop or begging him not to move away. Jason's hand cupped my jaw, steady and certain. "Don't pull away from me," he said, almost like it was a promise to himself. The kiss that followed was slow, deep, and deliberate, the kind that feels like it's been waiting for years to happen. My mind screamed about Daniel upstairs, about what this meant, about how there would be no going back. But my body stayed exactly where it was. His fingers slid into my hair, and I felt myself leaning into him, giving in to the gravity that had been pulling us toward this moment all night. The rain outside seemed louder now, pounding against the glass in rhythm with my heartbeat. Each second felt suspended, stretched thin between desire and disaster. When he finally pulled back, just slightly, his forehead rested against mine. "Tell me you don't want this, and I'll walk away." I opened my mouth, but no words came. The truth was, I did want this, more than I wanted to admit. And maybe deep down he already knew that. I didn't tell him to walk away. Instead, my hands found their way to his shoulders, and that was all it took. He kissed me again, this time harder, more urgent, as if the storm outside had moved into the space between us. My thoughts were a blur. Every nerve was awake, every sense heightened. His touch wasn't just physical. It felt like he was pulling me back into a part of myself I'd lost. We didn't speak, only moved in a silent agreement neither of us had planned but both of us understood. The kitchen felt smaller, the air heavier. And sound. A faint creak of a floorboard in the hallway. We froze, eyes locking. Jason stepped back just enough to glance toward the doorway, his chest rising and falling. The sound faded, and whoever it was didn't come closer. Maybe it was just the house settling. But the interruption was like a flash of light, a reminder of where we were, of what we were risking. I took a shaky breath, gripping the counter. If we keep going, there's no undoing this. Jason's eyes didn't waver. "I don't care," he said simply, his voice like steel under velvet. And in that moment, I realized I didn't care either. The line had already been crossed. Morning came too soon. The rain had stopped, replaced by a pale, washed-out light spilling through the curtains. I sat at the kitchen table, my coffee cooling in front of me, my hands wrapped around the mug just to keep them still. Daniel was already dressed for work, standing at the counter scrolling through his phone. Jason was across from him, leaning casually against the wall, looking for all the world like nothing had happened. I kept my eyes on the steam rising from my cup, afraid that one glance at him would give me away. My mind was a replay machine, looping over the night before, the sound of the storm, the way his voice had wrapped around my name. Daniel glanced at me, offered a quick smile. "You okay? You look tired." "I didn't sleep much," I said, my voice as even as I could manage. Jason didn't say anything. But when I finally dared to look up, his eyes met mine for the briefest moment, enough for my stomach to twist. There was something in that look, not just memory but a promise. After breakfast, Daniel grabbed his keys. "I'll be home late. Meeting ran over last night, and now I'm behind on everything." He kissed my forehead, his lips warm and familiar, yet they didn't make my heart race the way they used to. When the door closed behind him, the silence felt heavier than before. Jason stayed where he was for a second, watching me. I stood to take my mug to the sink, but he moved first, crossing the room with that same unhurried confidence he'd had last night. "We should talk," he said quietly. I shook my head. "No, we shouldn't. We can't." He tilted his head slightly, studying me the way he had before the first kiss. "You think pretending it didn't happen will make it go away?" My chest tightened. "It has to. Daniel's your friend. My husband. Last night was." Jason stepped closer. "Last night was real. You felt it. Don't tell me you didn't." I wanted to argue to push him away, but my body betrayed me. That magnetic pull was still there, just as strong in the daylight as it had been in the storm. I turned back to the sink, hands gripping the edge. "It was a mistake." "No," he said, his voice firm but low. "It was the truth. And I think you've been waiting a long time for it." The worst part was, I knew he was right. Somewhere deep down I'd been waiting for something, anything, to make me feel alive again. And last night, I'd found it in the one person I should never have touched. Jason didn't push further. He just gave a faint, almost knowing smile, and walked toward the guest room to gather his things. When he left, the house felt impossibly quiet. But his presence lingered, in the scent in the hallway, in the echo of his voice in my mind. That night, Daniel called to say he wouldn't be home until after midnight. I sat in the living room, lights low, pretending to watch TV. My phone was on the coffee table, face down, but I could feel it calling to me. When it finally vibrated, I already knew who it was. A single message lit up the screen. "Same time tomorrow." I stared at it for a long time, my heart pounding. I thought about Daniel, about the years we'd built together, about the vows we'd made. I thought about the storm last night and the way Jason's touch had pulled me out of the numbness I'd been living in. I didn't type anything back. Not yet. Instead, I sat there in the quiet, my mind a war zone, knowing one truth I couldn't escape: last night wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something I wasn't ready to name. And deep down, I wasn't sure I wanted to stop it.